How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 2 of What If Deku Was a Saiyan. And now, let's begin. All for one, you have to see this. One of these kids' blood samples I took to see what type of quirk they had. Their blood didn't match up with anything we've ever seen before. It wasn't human at all. I see. That's quite the discovery. Did he look strange at all? Could he have possibly had some sort of mutation or in his bloodstream or something like that? No, all for one. He looked perfectly normal like every other kid and human I've seen. Do you still have the blood you took from his blood sample? Yes, I do. Why? I would suggest keeping in case he becomes a threat later on. You never know, it might be useful. Yes, all for one. I will do that. Where should I keep it? Just somewhere safe where we can store it for long periods of time. We may never know when we'll have to use it at all. As all of this was happening, we now cut forward 10 years into the future, as we now see Izuku walking away from his apartment complex, as he's now walking towards a bus stop to get onto a bus that would then take him to the UA high school. As Izuku would get on the bus, he would sit down just thinking about what had transpired the morning before, or just the morning a couple of minutes ago. Izuku had ate breakfast in the uniform as his mother had came down and saw it and just looked on in shock. She didn't know what to think at all. There was her son with a UA uniform on, even though she had specifically told Izuku that he is forbidden from ever going to a hero school. And now there he was, sitting in her own kitchen, eating breakfast, just disobeying her rules. As Izuku just contemplated about it, his own mother, someone who had taught him how to be nice and what to do and not to do, and yet he had just completely left her behind, told her he didn't wish to talk to her anymore because he was holding him back. Izuku would put his hand to his head just thinking about it, as he couldn't believe what he had done, but he would justify it in his mind. His mother had been holding him back from his true dream, and that is something he didn't want to happen. He wanted to become a hero. He wanted to beat up villains as long as they just gave him a good fight. As ever since Izuku started to beat up all of those kids so easily, he had been in search of someone who could challenge him. However, no one ever came that could actually challenge him in strength. He'd sparred his mother twice before when he was 10. However, he had ended up beating her too bad that All Might had to step in and tell him that they should stop sparring. As Izuku would then have no one who could actually realistically keep up. Even when he would fight All Might, it just didn't seem like All Might was even capable. However, Izuku always felt like he should go easy on him just because of something that All Might was the strongest, and he should keep that mentality, that no one's knocking at his door trying to push him off the throne. However, Izuku would end up realizing that he was a fool for doing something so idiotic, and he should have easily beaten All Might, the number one hero. However, he just decided not to. So now we cut down to see the bus pulling up to the UA high school, as Izuku would step out of the bus marveling at UA campus's beauty. As he would end up walking around, he would see new construction all around the UA building. As he would end up walking in, he would also see one of the construction workers sitting down right on one of the steps by the entrances. Izuku would ask them what they were doing, as the construction worker would say they're building dorms for the students. As with this new year, Nezu had decided to upgrade security and had also been sending out just emails saying and asking for everyone if your kids can move in to the campus. However, Izuku hadn't heard anything about this from his mother. As Izuku just thought, oh, his mother probably hadn't received it yet. So Izuku would end up walking into the building as he would end up finding Class 1A before he would sit down in his chair that he had found for himself. He was quite early, finishing breakfast an hour before he had expected to, so he was sitting there just looking around, looking out the window of where his classroom was situated, looking at all of the construction that was surrounding the building. As Izuku would marvel at the campus's beauty, another student would end up coming in, as it was the same brown-haired girl that Izuku had saved just 2 weeks prior. As she would end up recognizing Izuku's jet black hair, she would walk up to him before touching his shoulder, as Izuku's head would jolt towards it as if looking for an enemy to defeat, as if just on guard at all times. As Izuku would see her and relax. Oh, hello, Uraka. I suppose we'd meet again. Congratulations into making it into Class 1A. As Uraraka would just smile, saying, oh, thanks. I actually never was able to catch your name. What is it? It's Izuku. Yeah. What about a last name? Izuku would just shake his head, saying, I don't have one. At least not anymore. As Uraraka would end up looking on strangely towards Izuku before sitting down next to him. You don't have a last name. What about your parents? Do they have a last name? Izuku would just shake his head once more. I don't have any parents. I just decided it'd be best if I went on my own path and had them stop holding me back. And I haven't heard from them since. Izuku would make up these lies he hasn't heard from his mother since, even though it was just only this morning, so of course he hadn't heard from them. And so Izuku would smile, knowing that the coincidence of the dorm had actually been in his favor, that he won't have to go back to his mother's house. However, Izuku knew one thing. His mom's probably going to try to get him to stay with her with the form that Nezu's going to send out. So Izuku would know he'd have to talk to Nezu about all of the strange things going on in Izuku's life. As we now cut forward 30 minutes as all of the students are walking into the classroom, just being rowdy, throwing things around, talking to each other, just being overall loud. As finally Aizawa would open the door, as the entire class would go completely silent, as they would see a yellow caterpillar-looking thing inch its way over towards the front of the classroom, where it would then get up and it would then reveal a zipper where it would then zip down to reveal that it was a sleeping bag, and a homeless-looking man would then step out of it. Good morning, Class 1A. You all took quite a long time to quiet down. Luckily you know how to quiet down when a teacher walks in. So anyway, I'm gonna give you 20 minutes to find your way where I'm at outside on Training Ground E. There's going to be maps all around the school, and you also have to find your way through the locker rooms and get your PE uniform. I'm not even gonna show you what it looks like, you just have to guess. And I'll give you 20 minutes to do that. You all may now be dismissed to go do that, and I'll be waiting for you all. Izuku would see the rest of his class get up and rush out, as Izuku would do the same. Izuku, being the competitive one he was, he would end up trying to find a shortcut. While many of the students would end up finding elevators to take, Izuku would find a stairwell where he would then skip downstairs, grabbing one of the railing and then jumping over it. This would prove to be an insanely fast method, as Izuku would reach the bottom floor in no time, as he would then end up navigating all throughout, where he would end up finding a basement, which just happened to be where all of the locker rooms were, specifically just tailored for Class 1A, B, C, and all of those. So Izuku, making it down to Class 1A's locker room, he would go into the boys' section, grab out what he thought was the PE uniform, and would then put it on, as Izuku would end up just rushing out once again, where he would end up looking at a map, seeing that the Training Ground E was just a couple meters beyond that, so Izuku would walk up another stairwell before taking a few just turns, and he would end up making it onto just a huge blank dirt field. So with Izuku now on this dirt field, he would end up looking around before seeing Aizawa slumped over by a tree, as Izuku would walk over to Aizawa before just sitting down next to him, as Aizawa would just look up with one eye barely open before just muttering something. Wow, you're quite early. Way earlier than I expected. Good job, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku would look harshly towards Aizawa before calmly asking him just to say Izuku, and that the Midoriya part isn't really needed. Aizawa would just nod his head in confusion or just saying, okay, I guess that's fine. I don't really care. As we then cut forward 20 minutes as the rest of the class slowly makes their way on to the dirt field. Alright, since now everyone is here, we may begin with what we are supposed to do today. Since Izuku got here first, I'll let him go first. Alright, Izuku, here, take this ball, Aizawa would say, throwing a ball towards Izuku. As he would catch it, he would then be instructed to step into a circle before saying to wind back his fist and throw the ball into the distance. Izuku would nod his head as he would end up winding back his arm before launching the ball into the near distance as it would explode off. As Izuku, seeing the ball going at an insanely fast pace, he would end up making another key ball in his hand before throwing it at the baseball that he had just thrown, as the key blast would whiz by everything else in its way before slamming into the baseball, sending it going faster and faster even more, as the key blast would continue on pushing the baseball till the baseball would start to go down, where it would then land 10,000 meters away. Aizawa would look on in shock before saying, wow, that's a new school record for sure. Good job, Izuku, Aizawa would calmly say, as the entirety of Class 1A just had their jaws dropped. All of that except Bakugo, who would push his way to the front before yelling at Aizawa that he's going to easily beat that and that he should go next. Aizawa would calmly sigh before just asking Bakugo to quiet down, but alright. Tossing the baseball to Bakugo, he would wind back his fist and send massive explosions going right into the baseball. As the baseball would go a few thousand meters, peaking at 2,000 meters, where it would fall and land at that exact spot. As Aizawa would look on, saying 2,000 meters. You're 8,000 meters shy from Izuku's 10,000. Good try, though. That's still one of the best I've ever seen, Aizawa would say, as Bakugo would just grumble, saying, How the hell... How did that Izuku beat me? This just doesn't make sense. As Izuku would end up just smiling on towards Bakugo, just as if giving him a glare that showed that he was better than him, which infuriated Bakugo even more. As Bakugo would end up charging towards Deku, stomping his feet. As he would go to grab Izuku's face, Izuku would calmly reach his hand up and grab Bakugo's wrist, completely twisting it as you would hear cracks going through it as Bakugo would start to yell in pain. As Izuku would reach over and flick Bakugo on the chest, as Bakugo would then start to fall backwards. Bakugo, there's a difference between you and me. You need to calm down. You're never going to be able to be as strong as me, so you should try to at least stop trying to compete with me, Bakugo. It's quite annoying when your anger gets in the way of your actual skill. You should probably go to some anger management classes to get that checked out. You'd probably make a far better hero if you were to do so. Bakugo would stare up at Izuku in pure hatred, as Aizawa would just tell them to stop being so idiotic. As the rest of the class would end up throwing the ball, Izuku's 10,000 and Bakugo's 2,000 would go uncontested. So as Izuku would end up hearing that the next just event was going to be a race, Izuku would easily get first in that, exploding off, flying past everyone, getting another school record. As Izuku, using his strength, would easily just top all of the charts, as many of them just looked on in shock as Izuku just seemed way too far out of their reach. However, as all of this was happening, you end up cutting it to see someone watching on from one of the cameras. That Izuku boy. I heard you didn't like his last name. That's quite interesting. He seems quite strong, don't you think? Yes, he does seem quite strong, Nezu. So, what do you think we'll do? He seems way out of the way far above Class 1A, as they are all out of his league, clearly, what these tests show. I've never had such a skill gap before, at least not since All Might. This is quite interesting. I'll have to think about this more. Hopefully something comes to me, as you would say, as we now cut back to see Aizawa looking on at an electric scoreboard. Well, Izuku gets first, no surprise there. Bakugo in a very, let's say, close to not upset his feelings, second, and Todoroki third, Momo in fourth, and so on and so forth. Aizawa would look on towards Mineta, who was just squealing in where he was standing, just squirming around as tears looked to be bubbling up in his eyes. He had gotten last place, and much like Aizawa had said just moments before when all of the tests had started, that whoever gets last place he would surely expel. However, Aizawa would just sort of laugh, just in a maniacal way. You think I'm going to expel you? Oh, please. The expulsion papers take far too much time. It's just not worth it. Anyway, I see some potential in you, Mineta, so you're good for now. At least for today, that is, Aizawa would say, before dismissing the entirety of the class to go back to the classroom, retrieve all of their things, and to go home. As all of this was happening, Izuku would grab the things he had brought before going around looking at some of the maps before traveling to the principal's office, where he would then reach down, knocking on the door before grabbing the handle or the doorknob, twisting and opening it before going into Nezu's office and sitting down on the chair in front of Nezu's desk. Good morning, good afternoon, Izuku. Foolish of me to say good morning. I've had my blinds shut all day, sitting in the dark, so it's been quite hard to see the time of day. Anyway, what brings you into my office? Nezu would say, holding on to his head. Oh, I would actually like to discuss something. I heard you were building dorms all around this building. Oh, yes. I suppose you heard that from either your teacher or one of the construction workers. Yes, we do plan to do that, and I suppose you're going to talk about the form. Do you possibly want it to be sent to a different parent or guardian of yours? Izuku would slowly nod his head before looking calmly on towards Nezu. You see, my mom doesn't want me to go here. I've had papers pre-filled out by All Might, actually, my stepfather, that allowed me to even take the test in the first place, not having her sign off on it. And so, now with the dorms, I know exactly what she's gonna say. She's gonna say, no, I don't want my baby going to your foolish school. It got my husband All Might killed. And I know exactly why she doesn't want me to go to this school. Because it killed her husband, so why wouldn't it kill her son, too? The line of hero work is really a foolish one, she always told me, saying that anyone who goes into it would always die in the end, which I suppose is right. They just might not die on the job, that is, because everyone eventually dies, unless you have some sort of immortal quirk, but that's besides the point. I want you to make an exception for me. And I possibly want you to not send any of those forms to my mother, as she's gone a little off the deep end after All Might died. She's been not the same ever since. And ever since she tried to just train me, she always tried to hold me back from what I thought was my true potential. And so I just feel like we're contradicting each other, and so I shouldn't really see her as much as I should be as her only son. Nezu would nod his head before sitting back in his chair. That's quite something to think about, Izuku. So I suppose that's why you told Aizawa not to call you Midoriya. Guess you're just saying you don't like that Because of your mother. That's quite interesting. Quite interesting. I suppose I could make an exception, but if word were to get out about this, I'd surely be under fire for not letting your mother see you or just holding you here as if holding you hostage. So I suggest you keep this under wraps for me and your sake. Izuku would nod his head, smiling on towards Nezu before thanking him as he would end up walking around before he would end up stopping right at the door. You don't suppose you could tell me when the dorm rooms are gonna be finished, right? Oh, they're actually finished right now. They were set to finish this afternoon. So, let's see. Nezu would pull up the blinds as you would end up seeing the finished buildings as Izuku would say, "What? How did I not realize they were all done? They looked like they were just setting up the framework this morning." Well, yes, with the help of some construction heroes that have construction quirks, we were able to finish it quite quickly. Oh yeah, thanks to them, I guess. So I guess I'll just allow you to make yourself at home. All rooms have been pre-laid out with a simple bed, desk, and some basic amenities that you're going to need. You can feel free to go out and get whatever you want to add to your room. So, yeah, go ahead. Izuku would say, "Alright. You don't suppose to tell me where the training field is either. Uyu, Nezu." Nezu would just sort of laugh before just pointing off in a direction. Izuku would just shrug his shoulders before thanking Nezu and walking off towards the training field, where he would end up being training all day, or for the rest of the day, before he would end up just wondering what type of food he could end up finding, where he would end up just walking around or end up looking in his pockets. He had a cool $5, and so he would walk around to some street vendors, getting a mixed variety of food with the very small sum of $5 that he had. He couldn't get anything too big, but he surely could get quite the medium-sized meal. So with all of that, Uku would walk back to where his dorm room was, sitting it all down, or just taking in into the food that he was able to get. As the next day would end up coming, and the next, and the next, and the next, as all of the students would end up be training. However, Izuku just seemed to be far above their league. All of the students realized it, as they would see him being able to quickly complete all of the training exercise in no time at all. As with them having to do 1,000 push-ups one day, Izuku finished it in no more than 2 minutes, or 1,000 sit-ups, which he did in 2 minutes as well. So many of them just thought, this kid's insane, and some of them would even ask what his quirk is, which Izuku would just laugh. "Oh, my quirk, that's quite the question, you know. My quirk. I don't suppose I have one." "You don't have a quirk? You must be insane, Izuku. How do you not have a quirk? You're far stronger than any of us. We've seen what you're capable of through all these training activities we've had to do." Izuku would just sort of laugh. "Well, I suppose I could tell you what my true power is, but I don't really want to. I'll just leave it up to this. My true power is because of training. If you keep on training, you could achieve a power you never thought was once capable before. However, you possibly will never be able to reach my level that I'm at right now." Many of the students would just sort of awkwardly nod their head at the cocky Izuku. However, Izuku was right, as Izuku one night would be seen walking on towards his apartment complex, as he would end up using the key that he had. However, he had found that the locks had been changed. I guess his mother didn't want him inside, or had felt that, okay, since he's gone, he's never coming back, which was crazy and a stupid decision. But Izuku could care less. He knew that his mother would never go into his room, as she wouldn't want to be reminded of him. So Izuku would walk over to see that his window was still just unlocked. As he would end up unlocking his window, as he was able to fly to it, as he would unlock his window before crawling into his room, before grabbing the big old-looking book with the golden letters on it that wrote out his name, Izuku Midoriya. Ah, here it is. Here it is. Oh, thankfully Inko didn't throw this out. Thank God she didn't do something so stupid. Izuku would end up flipping through the pages before end up finding another page he had never seen before. As he was walking back to the UA campus, he would end up reading out this page about the Saiyans, the species and race that he was. Izuku would read all about it, how they were always aggressive and this and that. However, Izuku would end up thinking something. Sure, I like to fight and all, but I'm not aggressive wanting to kill a bunch of people. That just seems quite stupid and odd. If they need to be killed, they'll be killed. If they deserve to be killed, that is. Say if they've taken another life. However, I'm not so sure saying that Saiyans are a murderous species is quite the right word to use. I suppose maybe not all Saiyans are the same. I guess my mother did teach me right in one sort of category, I guess. She didn't teach me to be a ruthless murderer. thank God to that one. Izuku would just sort of be laughing to himself. So he would end up making it back to the dorm room to see that some of the lights were on. As Izuku would open the door, he would see Aizawa sitting on the couch, as Izuku would end up walking in there. Yo, Aizawa, do you also live in the Class 1A dorm room? Aizawa would just say, I don't even know right now. To be honest, I think we actually have teachers here have their own dorm rooms. I just don't think they've been built yet. So I'm just hanging out here since I decided not to pay another month on my rent. So basically all my stuff's just chilling in the living room. I mean, since we still have another week till all of the students end up moving in here, so I do suppose Nezu made quite the exception for you, allowing you to move in here early. Yeah, I guess he did. Izuku would walk over to the elevator before clicking on the up button, as he had gotten one of the top floors. Since Izuku got to pick which dorm room he wanted first, Izuku chose the highest floor that he had gone to, and the farthest away just from the living area and common space, so that Izuku could just have the quietest room he could possibly have. So with that, Izuku would end up placing the book down on his desk before pulling up a chair, sitting down before flipping open the old pages, just reading countlessly throughout the night about all the different techniques that he had yet to learn. This book was one where he had learned about the Kamehameha wave, one that had basically been used by a Goku a ton. Well, for Izuku, I just looked at that word, Goku. It sounded familiar, but yet not familiar at the same time. Izuku just couldn't put his finger on it, but he just decided not to care. So closing the book, saying that he should not dwell on this at nighttime as it'd give him something to think about and keep him awake. As closing the book, Izuku would then hop into his bed before letting his eyes rest, falling into sleep. The next day, Izuku would wake up, walking into school, where Aizawa would end up having in big bold letters written up on the board, hero class, as many of the students would ask Aizawa about it, which he would just answer in a cold, plain answer. Oh, it's your first day of hero training today. Real hero training, not just basic workout training, that is. Many of the students would nod their heads, however, inside they were extremely excited. They couldn't wait to see what their hero teacher and who their hero teacher was going to be. As this was happening, Aizawa would then tell them, Alright, we designed your hero costumes just around a week ago. So, why don't you all go put these on in the locker rooms, Aizawa would say, clicking a button, as all of a sudden an entire rack of briefcases would open, as all of the students would reach in and grab the briefcase with their letters just inscribed on it. Izuku would open it, as he would end up seeing a gi that had been written in in the book, Izuku saw that it was meant for easy moving and not to restrict any part of the body, which Izuku thought was quite cool, and so Izuku would put it into just some of his favorite colors. So with that, Izuku now putting in the locker room, he would walk out to the city that Aizawa had instructed them to. As many of the students were walking, they were asking who their hero teacher would possibly be. Aizawa said their hero teacher was going to meet them down on City C. However, once they arrived, they would end up seeing the plain, old, boring homeless man that was their teacher, Aizawa, standing there in all of his glory. Hello, class. As many of you may presume, I'm your hero teacher. So let's not get discouraged about that. And let's start off with what we are going to be doing today. It's a simple procedure. It's called the Heroes vs. Villains assignment. 2 teams of 2, the one being the hero team and one being the villain team, will be tasked to fight against each other. The villain team will go inside of this building and have 5 minutes to hide a device made out of paper mache in the shape of an interesting one that you may encounter as a hero. They'll have 5 minutes to go and hide it, and once that 5 minutes is up, the heroes will then go in and have 15 minutes to capture the villains or touch the device to win. However, the villains can win by having the time expire and not be captured or the device being touched, or by capturing both of the heroes. So, let's draw out the heroes, shall we? As all of this would end up happening, Izuku's name would be called. He would end up stepping up, as so would Uraraka. They were on the villains' team, as they would be handed the device before being told that they may head in to the building to go and hide the device that they had. As they would go into the building, hiding the device, as they would end up looking out one of the windows very discreetly, as they would end up seeing the other team, being the hero team, walking into the building. It was Bakugo Katsuki and Tenya Ida. Izuku would say that he knew both of their quirks, being an explosion quirk and sort of an engine quirk, allowing for him to run faster. So all they have to do is trip up Ida somehow, and all they have to do for Bakugo is just to get him angry so he starts doing stupid movements so that he can be easily taken down for not really thinking very smart during a fight. Uraraka would nod her head before getting out some of that tape that they had for just restraining the hero team. So they would end up placing it around different doorways, as they would end up just putting themselves wherever, walking around, hoping that maybe Ida or even Bakugo would end up seeing them rushing off before tripping up on some of the tape that had been discreetly placed there. It was insanely strong adhesive, so even if they would end up running into it at such an insanely fast speed, it wouldn't break. And so with that, Bakugo would end up being seen exploding through the hallways, shattering down walls, looking endlessly with a hunger of destroying Izuku's team. Ever since Izuku had beaten him in the one last time in one of those fights, Bakugo had been in an endless search to destroy Izuku and show him who was the boss here at their school. And so that Bakugo had decided he wasn't going to get one-upped by Izuku anymore. He was going to destroy him and show him who was the best at combat. And so with Bakugo running around, he was bound to encounter Izuku, who was waiting at one of the smaller floors, knowing that Bakugo was going to rush in first, and would allow for Ida to escape up and fight Uraraka up on the top floors, where they had placed all of the tape at. So Izuku would end up seeing Bakugo there, looking around, as Izuku would see Bakugo rush in, yelling that he's going to kill Izuku. However, Izuku would just smile, ducking down as Bakugo would fly right over him, as Izuku, now with the ki blast in hand, would slam it up into Bakugo's chest, sending him flying through the ceiling and up into the next floor. as Izuku would then jump up, grabbing on to some of the decaying ceiling, pulling himself up, where he would end up seeing Bakugo getting out of just a pile of rubble and drywall. As he would end up looking on towards Izuku, would grab some of the drywall and explode off, reaching on towards Izuku, would just dodge his attack once more, as Izuku would continue on dodging all of Bakugo's attacks, as if telling him that he'll never be good enough to hit him. As Bakugo would continue on trying to do this, however, Izuku would end up seeing Bakugo go through and not protect himself very well. As Bakugo going for a left hook, he would leave his entire other side of his body open, as Izuku would go for an uppercut, slamming his fist into Bakugo's chest, knocking the air out of him. As he would end up stumbling backwards, holding onto his chest, Izuku would put both of his hands above his head, jumping forward before slamming his hands down into Bakugo's head, as Bakugo would be slammed down into the ground, as Izuku would end up hearing over the intercom that Izuku needs to stop toying with Bakugo and just to finish the match before Bakugo gets any more hurt than he already is. Izuku would just sigh, saying that he was having some of a good time beating up someone that had bullied him and one of his closest friends ever since they were kids. So Izuku would tightly tie Bakugo up, making sure that it was very restricting movement, so that Bakugo couldn't even move his arms or legs, just stuck in a straight position that happened to be on top of a pile of just rubble, making it insanely uncomfortable, as Izuku would end up walking up to the top floor, where he would end up seeing Ida in a just heated battle with Uraraka, as Uraraka would be holding on to a weightless pillar that had happened to be kicked down by Ida. As Uraraka would be doing this, Ida wouldn't realize Izuku was behind him, as Izuku would jump in, tackling Ida to the ground. While doing that, he would quickly tie Ida up, restricting his movements, as Aizawa would then announce, "And the villain team wins this match, taking out and tying down both of the hero team. You may now bring back the hero team back where we are, and then untie them." Izuku and Uraraka would both grab the person that they had been. Izuku would grab Ida, being the bigger one, as Uraraka would just make both of them weightless, as they would then float back with Izuku, just pulling on both of the people's legs, as they would end up making it back to where Aizawa was. They would set them down, untying the two, as Bakugo would end up jolting up, just glaring at Izuku before going to the corner of the room to reflect on how he could have lost to such an idiot, as Ida would just say good match to both Uraraka and Izuku, as Aizawa would end up looking around the room. Can anyone say anything for why the villain team had won that match? Mama would calmly raise her hand before speaking. Oh, they used teamwork to beat out the hero team that clearly seemed to be out of touch with their other teammate, as Aizawa would nod his head. Yes, they even devised a strategy to hopefully take down both the people, which sadly didn't work. However, Izuku's planning actually allowed for both of them to easily take out a respected person. However, Uraraka being able to draw time for Izuku to come in and take Ida out swiftly was also quite the good move. As this ended up happening, Aizawa would end up then asking if Momo could also tell them what the heroes could have done to prevent their just catastrophic loss. Which Momo would say, "Oh, yes, sure, Aizawa. The heroes could have stuck together and possibly could have overpowered Izuku since he was off waiting for Bakugo alone. And so if they were to work together instead of Bakugo shoving off Ida saying that he's going to beat both of them themselves, then they possibly could have overpowered Izuku and taken him out, and then overpowered Uraraka and taken her out as well." As Aizawa would nod his head, saying, "Yeah, that would possibly have worked for them. Sadly, they didn't do any teamwork, and Bakugo ran off, hoping to get all the glory for himself. A stupid move when, being that heroes have to work together most times, you're not always going to be stronger than the villain on a one-on-one. You have to get used to being on a 2-on-1, 3-on-1, or a team against another group of villains. You can't just overpower things yourself, Bakugo." You're going to have to learn that. And that's what we're teaching here at UA. Hoping to make you all better people at using your quirk, make you smarter in the hero knowledge. So, anyway, the next team in now step forward and go in and hide the device wherever they wish to hide it. And that is where I'm going to leave this What If off, everyone. I hope you all did enjoy part 2 of What If Deku was a Saiyan. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.